problem.
You'll need to connect to the internet first.
M-A-N-A-T-E-E. Nope.
All right, we're having some technical difficulties.
You'll need to connect to the internet first.
Apparently, we need to connect to the internet first.
You'll need to connect.
So, all right, we have a time certain, so we're in a little bit of disarray, but we do have a time certain, so I'll keep talking until we get everything situated. All right, so we have a couple things we need to do. Ms. Shank, first order of business, we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance and swear our new commissioner in.
Okay,
Does that
yes.
sound good? Very good. Okay, if you would, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as I said, we have a new commissioner taking his seat today, so I'd like to introduce Mr. Bill Smock. Hello, how are you doing? Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Bill Smock. I'm a native-born citizen here to Manatee County. I'm a graduate of Manatee High School, Manatee Junior College when it was a junior college. I've spent 9 years in the Marine Corps Reserves. I'm a veteran of the Desert Storm, Desert Shield operations. I own Gator Plumbing here in town. My father started the business 40 years ago, and I've been operating as chief operating officer for the last 20 years or so. And been watching my town grow up. I'm excited about it.
Very good, thank you. So who actually, the clerk does. Very good.
Good morning, Quintana Acevedo with the Clerk's Office. I need to administer the oath of office to you, Mr. Smoke.
Okay.
Stand up, raise your hand.
Smock. I'm sorry.
Stand up.
So I need you to stand and raise your right
You're
hand.
re-enlisting.
All right.
Only take 10 years.
With no bonus.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida, that you are qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state, and you will faithfully perform the duties of the Planning Commission, the office upon which you are about to enter?
I do.
Thank you. Congratulations from the Clerk's Office.
Okay, now we're going to move on to time certain. I have a conflict of interest. My company is a participant in the application. I'm sorry, not the application, this legislative matter, so I need to step away from the dais. I'm going to turn it over to the Vice Chair, Mr. Ron.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is my first time being chair, so if I mess it up, I apologize. I'm going to just let him run, the big guy run the show. Ms. Shane, do we need to read the 9 and 10? Can we read them in at the same time into the record, or?
Yes, we'll open two public hearings together, and Lisa Barrett will introduce the items.
All right. Ms. Barrett, can you read the items into the record, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item number 9 is LDCT-17-02, Ordinance 1905, formerly known as 1801 and 1722. This is a Land Development Code text amendment related to the airport zoning with SRQ special area of consideration and minimum state statute requirements. Agenda item number 10 is LDCT-17-02, Ordinance 1906, formerly known as 1842. This is also a Land Development Code text amendment, airport zoning, containing the minimum state statute requirements.
Ms. Shane, being this is legislative, do I need to ask if there's any ex parte communications, or?
No, you do not, but I just have a little bit of background to follow Lisa Barrett.
All right,
I
yes,
just want
ma'am.
to explain that the Planning Commission has a little unusual situation that we're presenting two ordinances that appear to be in the same topic. The reason there are two ordinances, one is what we call meeting the statutory requirements for airport overlay zones, and the other ordinance also meets the statutory requirements, plus has extra protection requested by the Airport Authority for their air rights around their runways. And the Planning Commission's role is merely to look for consistency with comprehensive plan. So for your purposes, the difference between the two it may not be relevant. It's really more important at the board meeting, because I'm a troublemaker on this. I'm going to be pointing out some pros and cons of each one to the board, and it's really more of a fiscal issue on property rights and, is there a compensatory air rights claim or not? And that's more of a legal issue at the board.
Okay. So it's more of a BOCC issue than
Yes.
our issue, okay. So then the next, I guess, would be the introduction by staff.
Yes, I'm just going to go over the background and discussion briefly and then turn it over to Kelly Klepper with Kimley Horn. He is representing staff. He is our county's consultant that worked with us on these amendments. Just some background information. In 2016, the Florida legislation adopted amendments to the Florida statutes, Chapter 333, Airport Zoning. The Airport Zoning, Chapter 333, addresses definitions and land use compatibility standards in and around public use airports. And per the statute, local governments are required to update their airport zoning regulations. On March 2nd, 2017, the Board of County Commissioners approved Ordinance 1703, PA-16-09, which was an amendment to the comprehensive plan, amending definitions, the future land use element, and the map series, and the aviation sub-element, again, of the comprehensive plan. These are the LDC amendments before you, and the amendments were presented to the Planning Commission on April 13, 2017, and the Board of County Commissioners on January 11, 2018. At the board public meeting, staff presented and included a recommendation and an ordinance with a request from the Bradenton-Sarasota International Airport, SRQ, to require land use applications within the approach zone of the airport to go through the plan development process to determine height. The discussions of the board at that time, they felt that this was subjective and asked staff to come back, work with SRQ, and determine specific heights within that approach zone. And Kelly will go through that in a moment. At the April 13, 2017 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission did vote 4-1 to move the ordinance and recommended approval to the Board of County Commissioners. So as Sarah already stated, we are providing two ordinances. One is more stringent. It meets the minimum requirements of Florida statute, but it also is including the height limitations that SRQ is asking for. The second ordinance satisfies just the minimum standards of the Florida statute, and Kelly will go through that, and hopefully it will make more sense at the end. And as Sarah stated, both ordinances can be found to be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Good morning. For the record, Kelly Klepper with Kimley Horn and Associates. I'm going to go through a brief PowerPoint and try to explain some of the information. Lisa has always done an excellent job introducing this. So if I could have our PowerPoint, that would be great. So some of you have seen some of this information previously, so I'm going to kind of skim through some of the higher level components, especially because Lisa and Sarah have both introduced portions of this. But what we're going to talk about is why are we doing the amendments to the county zoning code, what goes into land use and aviation components as far as the comprehensive plan and the zoning is required, and what's included in these specific amendments, whether it be a text and or a map. So as Lisa said, 333, which is the Florida statutes governing land use and zoning in and around airports, was amended a couple of years ago, and at the time the legislature said we want to provide additional I will say protections for airports in and around the state, realizing that they are an extremely important asset that the state has. So what they said was we want to make sure that we're coming up with a consistent set of standards that are being applied on a statewide basis, and also, like I said, relook at some of the protection measures that are there. Now, the thing to keep in mind is this applies to public use airports. So those that are airports like Sarasota, Bradenton International, as well as some of your smaller general aviation airports. The standards do not apply to private use airports. So we're only talking about those that are publicly accessible public use airports. When the state went through and made changes to 333, they did a series of strike-through and underlines. There is actually about a 2.5-hour PowerPoint presentation that the state put on. Not going to play that this morning, not going to ask you to review that. We've kind of given you a sample of some of the language that's here. Some of it was updates in terminology based on improvements in the industry. Others were clarifications of terms and definitions, and others were just, I'll say, more clarification of existing items. So there's two primary areas of interest that the code and the statute applies to, specific to noise in and around the airport. It's a long morning already. Noise in and around the airport, as well as land use from a land use component, as well as structure height in and around the airport. 333 requires the county and all municipalities to basically update their zoning code. But the one thing I will say and point out, and this is very clear in the statute, is the Florida Department of Transportation does not review and approve the code components. They provided a baseline. They ask that the communities, work from that and then adopt the standards specific to their community, but they do not provide, I'll say, technical support or a sign-off at the end of the day. I would also like to note that there is in place an interlocal agreement between Manatee County and the airport. It's been in place for a number of years. There's provisions in there that call out about land use and zoning. There's I'll call it interagency cooperation reviews and ongoing communication. And I will say that representatives from the airport have been involved with this throughout and have been a huge source of information. So as Lisa said, we've got two components that are going before you. I'll call it the Code Min 333 updates and then the optional items. The state statute gives you the option to add on additional standards as you see fit. So because of the amount of development potential within Manatee County, the airport took a look at a lot of their information, provided that data and analysis to us, and asked at that point, can we take this to the one step more? So that's the reason we have optional items that are referenced as special areas of consideration. So this is components that are actually required either by the Federal Aviation Administration under what's called FAR Part 77, that's the federal standards, and also the 333 components. So there's a combination of there. Again, these are actually referenced in the state statutes and as well as your current ordinance. These, I'll say, are the minimum requirements that apply. The map on the left gets into heights of structures and obstructions in and around the airport at various components. The long pink areas that you see extending kind of in that northwest to southeast direction, those are the approach surfaces that apply to, the airport's primary runway. Now, for reference and just for clarification, just wanted to identify there is a line about midway through this map. That is the county line between Sarasota and Manatee County. So instead of just showing what was being applied in Manatee County, we did want to make sure that everybody understands that this does apply to other portions of the community, including the city of Sarasota and Sarasota County. They're handling those components and those updates on their own at their own schedule. So we're talking about everything that's in Manatee County, so basically north of the line itself. The map on the right gets into not only land use and incompatible land use components, but it also identifies limitations on new and existing landfills within about a 10,000-foot radius of the airport itself. Landfills are hazards to airports, especially because of birds. So that's one of those things that the legislature and everybody got together and basically realized we need to expand those distances because with the increasing number of bird strikes they were seeing across the country, they wanted to ensure that there were additional protections at that time. One of the components that the 333 updates provide for is also a recommendation and we're not working here. There we go. There again is of the federal standards, and we'll briefly talk about that, but there are different types of surfaces in and around the airport. All of those are controlled by the Federal Aviation Administration as well as the airport itself. Gets into obstruction heights in and around the airport. So when we start talking about 333 and the land use components, there's also a recognition that the airport has undertaken what's called a Part 150 noise compatibility study. And what that does is within those areas, within the blue lines, those contours, there are certain limitations or extra construction and development standards that get applied for specific uses within those areas. You still can do certain things, but you may have to soundproof the building itself. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is it kind of looks a little weird with some of the shapes with the blue lines, and we've got a graphic to kind of talk about that a little bit more. But those are basically the noise contours. The airport's required to maintain and monitor noise levels at various areas in and around the airport based off of decibels. And there's a 65, a 70, and a 75, and it goes into a lot of technical components, but we'll just let you know that there are 3 basic contours that the airport and everybody is looking at. This is really slow today, Lisa. There we go. We wanted to show you this graphic. It's a little bit zoomed in version. The gray lines that you see extending out further into Sarasota Bay, those are actually the older noise contours. So you can see there's a gray line with a 65 on it. That is the old line. The one that actually has been adopted and approved for that same 65 contour is the outermost red line. Now you may say, well, what changed? What happened? Well, between the time frames when those 2 studies were done, you had increases in aircraft efficiency, engines, you had takeoff and landing procedures that were modified, so the noise impacts were actually minimized at that point. You may be looking at that and go, wait a minute, why was this 1993, 1998? The airport is under no obligation to update this on we'll say a 5-year basis or a 7-year basis like the county does with their comprehensive plan. They're required to monitor, and as certain things trigger different levels of noise, then they start undertaking the noise compatibility components. That's not saying that they're not monitoring that since 1998. To the contrary, they're monitoring this on a daily basis. And representatives from the airport can definitely go into a little bit more detail regarding that. But basically what we see is, and what we reference is, and adopt by reference is the airport's Part 150 noise compatibility study as part of this discussion. So there again, this is I'll call it the code minimum components that are in the first ordinance. The second ordinance has what we call the optional item, which identifies the special area of consideration. What the airport did is, and we've got a graphic to this effect, they actually been tracking inbound flights coming into and out of the airport itself. They do that there again just for a couple of different reasons. But one of the things that they started realizing is when you start looking at the federal requirements for slopes and those height obstructions into and out of the airport, they noticed that there were some tracks from their radar, they were showing aircraft going below those, which started to cause some concern for the airport, especially from a height and land use components. So the areas that they have asked the county to take a look at is the area that you see in the red here. That is the equivalent of what's called the inner approach surface. That large red polygon extending out from the runway, it's about 1.5 miles off the end of the runway itself. The smaller one is about 1 mile. And what that does is, under the federal standards, every 50 feet that you go out from the end of the runway, it goes up a foot. And so you've got this transition, this stair step, all the way out through that 1.5 miles, which starts to become a very complex mathematical equation that the county has difficulty in trying to interpret. So in working with the airport, they said, well, why don't we look at coming up with something that's a little bit more user-friendly in this case? So what they identified were 3 sub-areas within each of those inner approach surfaces, an A, B, and C. And they said, okay, looking at a couple of different things, we would request that the maximum building height within the pink area, which is sub-area A, be 35 feet, the yellow 45, and the green 55. Now, you may be thinking, well, that seems kind of short. And here's where a lot of confusion comes into play, unfortunately. The FAA and the airport are looking at all of these elevations from airport elevation. The airport has an adopted elevation of 30 feet. The county, of course, measures things from the base floor, base flooding elevation, which varies across portions of the county. In talking with staff and including Mr. Gerstenberger, in this general area, it's about 12 to 13 feet. So what the airport is not saying is 35 feet above the county's measurement. They're saying 35 feet above airport elevation. So there again, it starts to get a little confusing, but we do have a graphic that will show you. So based off of the information provided by the airport, the green line that you see there is the federal standard as far as a slope in and out of runway 1432, the primary runway. And what that does is shows that 50-to-1 step back. So there again, as you progress further out, the building height can go up, but we're talking every 50 feet, it's 1 foot, so you'd have a building potentially could have a slope on it. Instead, what they've done is look at, and that blue line is airport elevation. The squiggly line underneath that is a rough interpretation of where the county's current elevations are within that area, looking at Google and some other components. So you can see there's an area where it's below airport elevation that, of course, would be considered building height from the county. The red line is the most critical thing in this graphic to be looking at. That's the tracks that the airport has followed for aircraft coming in into runway 1432. And what you'll see is not all aircraft are following those federal standards. So when you start looking at some of those building heights that could potentially be at the end of the runway, especially in sub-area C, you can see the flight tracks are actually encroaching into that maximum of allowable building height. And that creates a safety concern and consideration by the airport itself. Now, one of the questions that we all started to ask was, okay, take a snapshot at the end of each of those sub-areas. So the end of sub-area A, what is the maximum building height that could be right there at that point based on the federal standards? And it's 50 feet above airport elevation. When you get out to the end of sub-area C, the maximum building height could be 150 feet. Now, keep in mind, that is not saying that the county has to allow 150 feet. That does not take into consideration the county's current zoning and height considerations. They're just saying from an FAA standpoint, that's the maximum building height, obstruction, or whatever else that they would be looking for. So when you start looking at what the airport has proposed with the 35, 45, and 55-foot building heights, in sub-area C, looking at those ground elevations and the county's interpretation of where to measure building height, you could actually have a building that's approximately 71 feet off the end of the runway. And that would be 55 feet above airport elevation, plus that area between airport elevation and the base flood. So that's how those numbers were derived with the 71 feet. So you're still talking about a pretty sizable building in those areas. They also looked at and did the analysis similar on the smaller runway, the cross runway. Same thing, still looking at just from a uniform standpoint, 35, 45, and 55. They've identified the FAA's slope at that point is a little different because it's a different type of runway, and then some of the tracking. And there again, what those building heights could be at the end of each of those sub-areas. So what we're here today to do is to present the two options, which are, I'll say, the code min and then the optional item, try to answer the questions. And I will say that representatives from the airport are here as well to help explain this. I know this is a very complex, complicated discussion, especially when you start talking about differences in building height measurements. So we wanted to definitely have those types of graphics in place so that we can answer those questions. And I'll answer any questions you may have at this time.
Ms. Shank, being that this is a time certain item, we're kind of jumping around. That was kind of the introduction by staff and the staff presentation at the same time. So should we go ahead and ask questions of staff now, then bring up the applicant?
Well, the county is the applicant, actually.
Okay. Okay.
So we have latitude and do either way. You can
Okay, I didn't know if we should bring up the airport authority or.
You just open for public comment, and they've
Okay.
signed up to speak,
Okay.
I'm sure.
Okay. Are there any questions of staff? Commissioners?
I just had one question, is what's the average delta between the floodplain and the airport elevation? What's the average differential?
In that area, it was anywhere between 14 to 17 feet, I believe.
Is the airport looking for stricter restrictions? Is that what they want?
Yes, sir. Those additional safeguards.
I'm good.
Okay. Are there other questions of staff? I have none.
I think the only other thing is, obviously, the thing that matters most to me is safety. And, you know, I know that there's a loss of property rights when you take heights away and so forth. So I guess my question is, would you describe the modifications as extremely conservative, reasonably conservative, just what's needed? I mean, I guess that's kind of, I want to kind of understand, you know, I don't find the airport usually coming and ask for stuff that's just makes them happy. They don't seem like those kind of guys.
The one thing I will say is, you know, we've had a lot of discussions with the airport, and that's the reason they provided us with those flight tracks. And, is that an everyday, every flight occurrence? No. But is one occurrence too many as a former pilot? And yes. But, is it overly conservative? I don't think it's overly conservative. Is it not needed? That's for you all to decide, unfortunately, at the end of the day.
But the statement you made was that there was a history of pilots. And being a pilot, you won't take any offense to this. There are guidelines, and then there's how they fly, right? And they're a little different sometimes. So we have an experience that tells us we've got something that's out of the format of what we prefer and recommend and is the guidelines, but we know what's going on. I guess I'd have a hard time saying, if I know that, sometimes do you have knowledge and when do you have it? I don't want to, I'd be concerned if I was not aware of that. So I think that's helpful that we know that.
Let me ask one more question.
Yes, sir.
As of right now, the regular land use code would still prevent buildings from being of that height. Am I correct? There's nothing in that area that would be that height, and we don't build buildings that are.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Roth, well, there's different zoning districts within both of those approach zones. There is zoning, standard zoning today. It depends where you're at in subarea A, B, or C, but we have light manufacturing, heavy manufacturing that allow 45, 55-foot high buildings, 4 and 5 stories. With the implementation of the urban corridors, there's a potential to go 5 and 7 stories. They would still have to meet the FAA minimum, but that could be a difference between what SRQ is asking and the urban corridors.
Can I follow up on that and ask, have you done a summary of all those who are impacted on this? Do you have some idea on how many land parcel or how many acres are affected by this?
I don't have the acreage. It's more than I think we looked at both approach surfaces, more than 1,000 parcels.
Wow.
1,000?
Yes.
Can you tell me when they bought that land? I was kidding. One of the old questions is who came first? God creating the land or the airport? They're close, right? Okay.
Mr. Rutledge, there was one on the slides, and if we can have, either the overhead or the slide, there's a graphic that actually, when you start looking at, we'll just use this one. Okay. That's actually, the red lines are overlaid on the county's parcel map, so you can see, and it's kind of tough to see at this point, at this scale, but about 1,000 parcels. Some of those are fairly small. Some of them are
housing units there.
Some of them are residential. Some of them are manufactured housing. I'll say the larger parcels are the ones off to the right side in the industrial zoned areas. But keep in mind, you do have a mixture of residential and non-residential within both of these areas.
But the likelihood of somebody who has a mobile home unit being able to go 45 feet is somewhat, so the 1,000's probably not who could be reasonably affected, I guess. That's what I guess I was trying to, in other words, we're taking rights away from somebody. And I understand that, if we have if you have a 10-acre commercial site, which I'm more experienced with, that has some economic impact. If you have a mobile home site or a small residential unit down there, that's not quite the same impact to them. It may be zero impact in my opinion, but okay, all right.
Yes, Mr. Spott.
Being new here, I guess the question that would come to mind is, are there anything in the pipeline that I haven't, since I'm new here, I haven't heard anything on? Is there anything in the pipeline that's coming before the commission or being presented that would be affected if these restrictions were put in place?
Madam, Mr. Chairman, if I may, basically we did have one lawsuit challenging the council plan amendments when we did them, and because that was a pending project, we grandfathered them in. And they do have a pending project coming forward. I'm not sure what the height is on that. But they're grandfathered in on the existing comp plan, existing airport impact overlay district. We have an overlay district now, but see, the statutes were amended to require additional components be added to the code. And the statutes or the FAA does not require the stricter height limit. That's something the airport authority is requesting.
Okay.
if this ordinance is passed by the board approximately February, any new applications filed will go under the new code.
But they would know going in what the restrictions are, and it would
Correct.
be their
Presumably, they
decision.
would talk to staff or have a pre-application meeting to know that.
And the one grandfathered in, he understands if a plane hits his building, it's on him? Sorry.
Well, he may not have any height issue on his new
You'll be-
project. I'm just saying. I'm not saying there's
You'll
an
be
issue
finding
with
I
it.
have a certain sense of humor that may come out of my mouth, and I can't be controlled.
You're going to fit right in.
Okay.
Are there any more questions, staff? Thank you. Right now, I'd like to open it to public comment.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Frederick Piccolo. I'm the President and CEO of the airport. I just want to explain a little bit of the reason that we're asking for these special considerations is that we have flight tracks. We can track every aircraft and its height. And just to give you an example, what you'll see on this, these are all the arrivals that go through that area. If they can bring it up on the... There we go. This is the area in a previous application that we tried to explain. These are all the arrivals that are coming. These are all flight tracks. Every one of those is a little line of flights coming in. That's over, I think, an 8-month period. And what we're able to do is not just track where they are, but also what height they're at. And what we found is that while Part 77 has a certain height requirement, Commissioner Rutledge, we were absolutely correct. It's not a railroad track. It's an airplane. And the weather and the winds all affect that, and the talent of the pilot. And we have some pilot schools as well, so some that don't have a lot of talent yet. And so they don't always fly at the height that Part 77 is at. And so we set these standards after looking at all those flight tracks and saying, all right, we want to make sure that nothing's going to run into a building if it's set at that height. And so we looked at that, and that's why we came up with these recommendations. And you're absolutely right that we weren't trying to be onerous. We're trying to be as giving as possible to the landowners, while at the same time protecting the safety and welfare, not just of the people in the aircraft, but the people who would be in that building should they build that building. Because it's a very unforgiving thing when an aircraft hits a building. So I just wanted to give you that reasoning behind it, and that, frankly, the Planning Commission approved the previous one, and we were requested by the Board of County Commissioners to try to have something that was less subjective and more objective, so that when a landowner goes into that meeting with Manatee County, they know exactly what the standards are, rather than, all right, we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of planning money on a planned development, and then have maybe the airport coming in objecting to it and setting up something where the board gets put in the middle, and then you have a problem, and maybe it gets rejected and they spend all this money on it. So we want to have something that's much more objective, and this was that effort.
Any questions of work?
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any staff closing comments? Since you're the applicant, would you like to rebuttal against yourself? Any deliberations among the commission?
I would just like to reiterate, I just think that, the airport's a great asset to the community. I think, some of our responsibilities are probably not fun, or, kind of like a parent, you have to do the best thing you can, and sometimes kids don't like it. And I don't mean that arrogantly, I mean it with some real consideration. But I can't imagine how I would feel if we were economically aggressive for the landowners and imprudent for somebody's family. And so I have no problem with this. I find the airport guys, I don't like to say this when they're here, but I think these guys are reasonably smart, and they come with things prudently analyzed and presented to us. So I'm just going to be very positive to this, and I think to the extent that it's set out as a futuristic decision, I'd like to be more cautious and safe protecting the community than I would, maybe letting somebody convert their mobile home into a tower or something. I don't know, whatever. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner Rutledge. Any other comments? Can I get a motion?
Just to clarify, so we're looking for the motion be on item 9 and item 10.
Yes, ma'am.
Two motions.
Yes. Can I get a, motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Oh, let's just be clear which one. So item 9,
I don't like
I'll just read for the record what ordinance,
Yeah.
it's a little confusing here. Item 9 is ordinance.
Could you read it for me?
Yes. Item 9 is ordinance 1905. And the recommended motion is based upon the staff report, evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing, and find the request to be consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan and in accordance with Section 341 of the LDC. I recommend adoption of ordinance 1905, amending the LDC as recommended by staff.
That's my motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Can I get a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. It passes unanimously.
Okay, and then we have a second motion, just for the record, it's ordinance 1906. And the recommended motion reads, based upon staff report, evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing, and find the request to be consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan in accordance with Section 341 of the LDC. I recommend adoption of ordinance 1906, amending the LDC as recommended by staff, with the understanding either one or the other will pass.
I so move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Can I get a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. It passes unanimously.
Next.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes,
Good
ma'am.
job. Thanks.
Yes?
Just for clarification, so both ordinances are moving to the board?
Yes.
Okay, just clarifying.
And now we'll let Mr. Conley, the chairman, take over again.
Oh, sorry.
You gonna sign in?
I have to sign in. All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. All right, we're going to move on to the regular agenda. First, first thing we'd like to do is discuss, are there any changes to the agenda, Ms. Tusing? I think we have a couple changes.
Yes, good morning, Margaret Tusing with Building and Development Services. There are a few changes to the agenda. Item number 5 is the Public Works Standards text amendment to the Ingress and Egress easements. There's a revised recommended motion on the update, so please use that motion when making a motion this morning. Number 11 is PDC 1803 ZP CSPR Sanders Family Limited Partnership, the Parish Chin Road Center. There's an added stipulation A2 and a revised recommended motion to reflect that. That was an stipulation requested by Mr. Gerstenberger. Item number 12 is PDMU 1704GR, Alprop 1 LLC, Florida International Trade Port. It was formerly known as the Ellington Commerce Park. There is a environmental report. For some reason, the report had...
Apologize.
I feel like we're in a spaghetti western.
Actually, I did it on purpose.
Oh, fun day.
Go ahead, Margaret.
See if you can top that.
I can't.
Go ahead, make my day. Sorry, wrong genre.
Okay, where was I? On number 12, there's an environmental report attached. For some reason, when it got printed in the agenda package, there were blank pages, but it has since been fixed. And then also a revised general development plan cover sheet that is attached in the memo. And that's all I have for changes to the agenda.
Very good, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item number 2, which are the minutes from November 8, 2018. For approval, have the commissioners had an opportunity to review? If so, are there any changes, modifications, clarifications? Okay, seeing none, the chair will consider a motion. All those in favor? Actually, we need to consider a...
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair, to accept the November 8th, 2018 minutes for approval.
Very good, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Roth. Again, is there any discussion, deliberation? Hearing none, the chair will call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Opposed, like sign. Hearing none, motion passes 5-0 with 1 vacancy and 1 absence. Very good. Ms. Shank, I believe you wanted to provide some guidance for the board regarding some general rules.
Yes, I just want to give an overview. We have one new board member on disclosure of ex parte communication. Since he was recently appointed, it may likely be there's no issue by just explaining it. Because the site-specific land use approvals like rezonings and site plans are quasi-judicial, the board sits like a judge, quasi-judicial like judge, and we're supposed to base our decisions or recommendations on testimony in front of us, not what anyone spoke to us about outside the public hearing record. Like judges, you can't walk across the street and talk to the judge about your case. So basically, sometimes, maybe more like at the county commission level, but sometimes you're approached by people casually. They might mention a pending project and their feelings on it. The advice of the office is to just simply say, please come to the hearing to give your testimony. I can't discuss it because it's quasi-judicial. Base advice of counsel, if you want to blame me. And emails are a little bit easier. They just forward any emails you might casually get to Bobby Roy from Citizens, and she puts them in the packet and discloses them. The rule is to avoid ex parte communications, but if you disclose them in the record, either by saying, I visited the site, I spoke with a certain person by the name and the date and what they said, or the email gets disclosed in the record, you sort of cured the problem, because everyone's on notice as to what happened.
So with regard to the ex parte communication, again, for clarification, that exists when we're considering ex parte.
Quasi-judicial. Yes, I'll just explain when you say any ex parte communications what that means.
And it doesn't affect the legislative issues.
Correct.
Because they're essentially for not specific applications.
Countywide.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. And then with regard to ex parte communication, if somebody should reach out to you via Facebook or via some other social media, just don't respond to it, and it's not considered an ex parte communication. Communication requires.
Well, it's still a issue, and we encourage people not to have social media accounts that invite this type of dialogue, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's why I don't have Facebook. that and I don't know how to use it. All right, very good. So the next thing we have are citizen comments. So this is an opportunity for anybody who wishes to come forward and make a comment on something that is not on today's agenda. There'll be an opportunity to speak on specific applications. So if there's anybody who wishes, again, to speak to something that's not on the agenda, please come forward. Okay, seeing nobody come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing, and we're going to move on to the advertised agenda. And again, these are quasi-judicial, which means that anybody providing testimony or comments need to be sworn in. So if you plan on speaking today, please rise to be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to present to the Planning Commission will be truthful and accurate?
I do.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. So the first application for consideration is item number 4. Ms. Tusing, can you please read item number 4 into the record?
Yes, sir. Item number 4 is PDR 1812ZG PGCI 4 LLC Silverleaf Rezone. It is a quasi-judicial, and it is being continued and will be re-advertised for the January 17th, 2019 hearing.
Very good. Thank you very much. So even though it's being continued, we're going to open this up for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on item number 4, Silverleaf Rezone? Anyone at all? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of this application, and Chair will consider a motion to continue.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion. I move to continue the public hearing for PDR 1812ZG to January 17th, 2019.
Very good. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Roth, second. Any discussion? Hearing none, the chair is going to call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. All right, we're going to move to the next item, which is item number 5, the Public Works Standards. Ms. Tusing, can you please read?
Yes, sir. Item number 5 is the Public Works Standards text amendment to the Ingress and Egress easements. I don't see Mr. Mowbray here. if you have any questions about that item, because I don't know anything.
Where
about
is
it.
he?
I don't know.
Kidding.
Okay.
Mr. Gerstenberger is here. He can probably pinch it if we need him.
All right. Mr. Gerstenberger, could you please please tell us what this item is?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, fellow commissioners. For the record, Thomas Gerstenberger, Public Works Department. I've been sworn. With respect to this particular text amendment to the Public Works standards, it is with regards to access for larger size tracts of land with respect to tracts of land of or greater than 10 acres that are zoned within the Zone 8 agricultural zoning districts. What has been identified by staff is that within certain areas within the county, namely the Palmetto Park and the Waterbury Grapefruit tracts that were subdivided into subdivided through a plat, and those particular plats that date back into the mid-1920s, that there are restrictions within the existing public works standards that prohibit the utilization of what would be a single split of a particular tract of land, and to utilize an access by easement through the parent parcel to a subdivided piece of that tract. So this particular text amendment would address that restriction that is presently in place and would allow a single split of a 10-acre or greater tract, and utilizing an access easement to grant access to the portion of that tract that is being subdivided.
And for clarification, I believe the language has a time, not a deadline, a stop on anything past, anything subdivided after 1926.
Correct. Yes.
So this is essentially a cleanup.
Specific.
Yeah,
It's very specific.
Very specific. So again, just so we understand, if somebody has a large tract of land that was subdivided prior to 1926 and they want to split the lot and provide ownership to somebody else to utilize for maybe a residential unit, they could then use this as a means of ingress egress.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure it's a little unclear. Wasn't a lot of information with regard to this. So, any questions for staff?
No, sir.
So nothing after 1926 is impacted by this? I hope this clears up a lot of issues for you.
So,
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Rutledge, as I alluded to, it is very specific. It is with respect to the Palmetto Park and the Waterbury Grapefruit tracts.
It's fine.
good. Okay, thank you. Any additional questions, comments for staff? Clarification necessary? Okay, the chair will consider a motion, and please remember, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Everybody wants to go by the rules.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't expect to talk about this,
Yeah.
but I just have a question. And,
all right.
For the record, my name is Bob Schmidt, and thank you for offering me the opportunity.
Yes.
Tom, you may have already answered the question, but if this pertains only to Palmetto Park and Waterbury Grapefruit, that's one thing. But there are a lot of easements out there that were recorded after 1926 that are providing access to existing houses.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't want to have an issue come up where one of my clients calls and says, I'm going to tear down my house. I can't rebuild it now. And I just wanted to ask that question as to whether or not that was addressed.
All right, thank you. Point made. Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on this matter? Anyone at all? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment portion of the hearing that almost didn't happen, and we'll get some additional clarification from Mr. Gerstenberger. Tom, this applies to the zonings. It doesn't necessarily affect the easements. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. It is specific to the utilization of an access easement with the subdividing of a tract of land that is 10 acres or greater within the Zone A category.
Okay, so there sound like a couple different boxes that have to be checked. It has to be subdivided prior to 1926.
Well, no, it has to be a tract of land within either a tract of land that is presently within a subdivision, vis-a-vis Palmetto Park or Waterbury Grapefruit, that were created through a plat prior to 1926.
Mm-hmm. And zoned.
Zone A, and
Zone
has
A.
present zoning category of Zone A.
Right, so say somebody has a tract of land that they want to do a lot split on. Essentially, that's what we're talking about, our splits, parcel split or lot split. If it maybe doesn't meet the criteria for, say, the size of a minimum lot within that
Correct.
zoning,
Yes.
This has no bearing on that. The zoning rules of limit what can be done.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And again, it's very narrowly written, so to our knowledge, it only applies to a certain number of platted lots within the county.
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chair.
Yes, the difference is on a 10-acre tract, if it is not in a recorded subdivision, you can split that into 5-acre tracts and have access by easement.
Mhm.
You cannot have access by easement in a recorded subdivision. That's where the problem is coming
A
from.
platted lot.
Correct.
Right, so. Okay, and I believe it was probably very common in the past to just plat large tracts of land and subdivide it, so that's probably, we've created this issue and, so, okay. All right, very good. Any other questions, comments, clarifications? Okay. So again, the chair will consider a motion, and again, please be mindful that we have a revised motion in our updated agenda. Anyone?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair. Based upon staff report, evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing, and finding the request to be consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan and the Manatee County Land Development Code as conditioned herein, I move to recommend adoption of Resolution 19-001 as recommended by staff.
Very good. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Roth, second. Is there any additional deliberation? Okay, the chair's going to call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item number 6, which is the Patron Holdings LLC application. Ms. Tusing, could you please read that into the record?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Items number 6, 7, and 8, staff will give a brief overview of what the case is, for the public and for y'all to understand a bit more than just the title. Item number 6 is PDEZ 0821ZGR3, Patron Holdings, LLC, Port Management and Encouragement Zone, Area C, and this is quasi-judicial, and Dorothy Rainey will give a brief summary at this time.
Very good. And just as a reminder, this is the applications that Ms. Tusing referenced that staff will give a brief presentation on. Our introduction are presentations upon request. These are applications that during the review process, staff has not had any significant dialogue with folks outside of the applicant and fellow staff, and they don't seem to be items that are controversial or require anything other than a clear application of the rules we have. So, what we are going to do is allow the applicant the opportunity to also make a presentation, so we protect the due process of the hearing. And but again, that the presentation from the applicant is going to be limited. There'd be a time limit, but I don't think it's necessary that we have a full presentation. So, Ms. Rainey, if you would, please.
Good morning. Dorothy Rainey for staff, and I've been sworn.
I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Again, this is quasi-judicial. So we need to disclose. Have there been any ex parte communications regarding this matter?
No, sir.
Okay, and I've not had any, so there have been no quasi-judicials disclosed. I'm sorry, Ms. Rainey.
No problem. Okay, here's the overall map zoomed out of the location. The property is in yellow, right there, and it's Area C. It's one of the four quadrants of the PDEZ zoning, and basically it is coming forward because it had been rezoned to PDPI. Actually, there was a comprehensive plan amendment to change to the from IL to the PSP1 category for public, semi-public uses, and the PDPI was to accommodate a proposed energy generating facility. However, that never took off, so now the applicant or the owner wants to revert back to the PDEZ so that it can take advantage of whatever is allowed within the PDEZ zoning district as per, again, this is considered the general development plan for the entire area, and it has a listing of all the dimensional requirements, setbacks, all the uses that can be considered for approval on the site. So they're just, and they've been listed all along as parcels at the bottom right of the GDP, so that they just are changing their zoning, and they're still on the list there for consideration of all the uses that are listed, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, can you please clarify, originally this was part of the PDEZ zoning, it was removed and now it's being put back into it?
Well, it was always inside that zoning, or that quadrant, but it was designated with the PSP1 future land use as well as the rezoning to PDPI. And actually, they're not changing the future land use category back to the IL, and there was a specific indication in the ordinance that said that if they do go back to PDEZ, they don't have to change, they can develop it in accordance with the IL future land use category, even though it's not changing back to that. So that was a condition that they provided just in case this very thing happened. So.
Very good. And EZ is the encouragement
zone
around the port. So, okay. So these lands were identified for port-related uses and
right.
Okay.
Yeah, most of the participants in this it was voluntary. The county asked if they wanted to be included. So.
Very good.
And they did.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, to protect the due process nature of this hearing, we're going to allow the applicant an opportunity to provide any additional clarification or information. Again, this is a presentation upon request. If you feel the need to provide additional information, that's.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
For the record, Bob Schmidt with Land Planning Associates, and I have been sworn. Dorothy did a good job explaining everything, and this just opens it up to the EZ uses as opposed to the PDPI zoning district, which was kind of limited to the biomass facility. And that's gone, as she explained, and so we want to reopen it to the EZ type of uses, encouraging port types of uses that are compatible with the port. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Very good. And with regard to the potential uses are already those that were listed for any PZ zoning, PDEZ zoning, correct?
That's correct. It's already listed on the Area C map, so we didn't even have to provide a general development plan because it was already in place.
Very good. Thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant?
Can we ask what they might want to be putting there?
I don't think they know. I think Mr. That's not a really relevant testimony, but if Mr. Schmidt has information, he could probably.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Roth, we don't know. PDPI is very limited as to what you can do, and PDEZ is much more vast, so we want to move back to that.
I'm good.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this is, I'm sorry.
Mr. Rutledge.
So this is the list of agricultural, office, eating establishments, drive-through banks, hotels, research. So I mean, it's a pretty broad category, right?
That's correct.
It's taken away from this unique specialty category. Okay.
That's correct. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. So we've had applicant provided information. We're going to open this up to public comment. So is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward and make a comment? Please come forward. If you would, please state your name and that you have been sworn.
I have not been sworn in.
Okay, very good. Again, we're going to have the rest of the applications are quasi-judicial, so if you intend to speak, please be sworn in.
You swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to present to the Planning Commission are truthful and accurate?
I do.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
My name is Rich Vogel. I work for Egress Energy. We are an adjacent landowner. We're on the western side of the Patron property. We have no objections to allowing them into the PEDZ. One question I do have is there any interest, or is there any ability to, and there's been talk in the past about trying to put heavy industrial into those parcels. There was some momentum in the past, but it seemed to have dissipated. Has there been any talk about, because we would be interested, because we own the southern 100 acres, that is to the west of them. It's still limited for light industrial, even in the PEDZ, and there had been talk about trying to do heavy industrial. Has there been any discussion about that lately?
Okay, very good. Thank you for your comment. This application before us is very narrow. What I would suggest is you talk to staff. You could probably initiate something yourself, or the county could initiate something if it's appropriate.
Can I ask the applicant if they've looked into it?
After the hearing,
Okay,
or
okay. Thank you
outside of the bounds of this hearing, but this application that's before us is very narrow, so we need to keep the discussion related to this on point. So, is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on this application? Okay, seeing nobody come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing and ask, does staff have any additional comments? Okay, seeing none, nobody come forward. Does the applicant have any closing comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be happy to talk to Mr. Vogel, but we're going back to the uses that are allowed in the IL, Industrial Light Future Land Use category. So the answer is no. We understand that we're not asking for any heavy industrial uses, but I'll be happy to talk to him.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and is there any discussion, deliberation, clarifications that we need to vet amongst the commission here, or do we have a motion that we want to proffer?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair. Based upon the staff report, evidence presented, comments made at a public hearing, and finding the request to be consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan, Manatee County Land Development Code, as conditioned herein, I move to recommend adoption of Manatee County Zoning Ordinance PDEZ 0821 ZGR3, approved the revised general development plan with the stipulations A1 through A3, B1 through B3, and C1 as recommended by staff.
Very good. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Ross, second. Is there any deliberation on this application? Okay, seeing none, nobody indicating so, we're going to call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item number 7. Item number 7, Ranch Vet Rezone. Ms. Tusing, can you please read item number 7 into the record?
Yes, item number 7 is Z 1808 ACDC2 LLC, Ranch Vet Rezone, and as quasi-judicial, and Kimberly Middleton is the planner.
Very good, thank you. Good morning, Ms. Middleton. Apparently, I forgot to ask if there were any ex parte communications on this one. Have we had any ex parte communications on this application?
No,
okay.
sir.
Seeing none, chair has none. So, thank you for reminding me, and thank you for the next application because I'm probably going to forget again.
Good morning, Commissioner Chair and fellow commissioners. My name is Kimberly Middleton. I'm a planner with Manatee County, and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
The request before you today is to rezone approximately 5 acres from general agriculture, which is the A zoning district, to general commercial, which is the GC zoning district, with a future land use category of retail office residential, or ROR. I have a map that I'd like to put on the overhead here. Can't really see it that well here, but the site is right here. So the site is located generally north of State Road 70 and west of Lorraine Road in Manatee County. The site is also located in the Special Treatment Overlay and the Egress Reservoir Watershed Protection Overlay. The surrounding uses are as follows. To the north is the residential subdivision of Wyndham. To the south is a retail plaza that includes Dunkin' Donuts, Rico's Pizzeria, and Salty's Printing. To the east is a Publix that is currently under administrative review, located in Lorraine Corners, and to the west is vacant land. Now to the south of State Road 70, there are additional commercial and retail establishments such as Wawa, Walgreens, a preschool, and a daycare. The site is exempt from meeting commercial locational criteria due to the future land use category of retail office residential. Being that this is a straight rezone, the general commercial zoning district requirements will be reviewed at the final site plan stage. Staff does recommend approval for this request. Should the commission have any further questions, staff will be here to answer them, and the applicant as well. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Are there any questions for staff? Okay. And just for clarification, a lot of times we see PD zonings come before us. This is a straight rezone, so there's not a specific site plan. It's just categorizing, rezoning it to a category that has whatever is allowed by right in the code.
Correct. And it's, the area is transitioning to commercial from agricultural, so it just seems like a logical expansion.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. We're going to go ahead and open it up, the hearing for the applicant. Mr. Schmidt, is this one yours also? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, my name is Bob Schmidt with Land Planning Associates, and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
As Kim identified, it's a logical expansion of commercial. There's new Publix going in across the street and a subdivision built to the north. It's kind of an outlier of agricultural zoning that's had a kennel on it for many years, and so this is a logical conversion to commercial. Again, like the previous application, we don't know who the user is going to be yet. It's 5 acres, but we anticipate putting it on the market upon rezoning and seeing who comes along.
Very good. Thank you. All right. We're going to go ahead and open this application for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward and make a comment or statement regarding this application? Anyone at all? Okay. Seeing no one come forward, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment portion of the hearing. And staff do you have any closing comments? Anything that needs to be tied up? Mr. Schmidt, do you have any additional information? Anything from the commission? Okay, very good. We're going to go ahead and close the public comment. I'm sorry, the public hearing, and if the commission has no additional discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. Based upon the staff report, evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing, and finding the request to be consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan, the Manatee County Land Development Code, I move to recommend adopt the Manatee County zoning ordinance, number Z1808 as recommended by staff.
Very good. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Ross, second. Again, is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, the chair is going to call the matter to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate so.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The chair votes aye. The motion passes 5-0. So very good. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to application number 8. Our item number 8, application for Covered Bridge Holdings 3. Ms. Tusing, can you please read that into the record?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item number 8 is PDMU 1809ZG. It is Covered Bridge Holdings 3 LLC, State Road 70 Commercial Subdivision. Again, it is a quasi-judicial hearing, and Dorothy Rainey is the planner.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted
Yes,
to
ma'am.
clarify for the record while Dorothy's coming down. There was a page in the staff report that referred to the applicant's agent as Mr. Surveyor, King Engineering. I just wanted to clarify that the surveyor is a county commissioner, no longer affiliated with King Engineering, and not involved in this project.
Okay, thank you. So noted. And have there been any ex parte communications?
No.
Okay. Seeing, Chair has no disclosures, so very good. We'll go to staff when Ms. Rainey gets her stuff. There you go. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. Dorothy Rainey again for staff, and I have been sworn. And the request before you is State Road 70 Commercial Subdivision. It's a rezone to planned development mixed use with a general development plan. I'll go ahead and just do briefly the area map. It's located just north side of State Road 70 and a bit east of White Eagle Boulevard. This is their general development plan showing the 4 lots that they're going to subdivide the commercial subdivision into. And there's an access point going down the middle, basically, to access all 4 lots internally. It'll be considered an internal driveway or drive aisle, not a public right-of-way or private right-of-way. So, again, the request is to rezone to planned development mixed use. It's 19.49 acres, and they're going to make a 4-lot commercial subdivision. They have a limit of a 0.35 floor area ratio for all uses to be established. They provided a schedule of uses, which is in your packet, listing all the uses that can be considered for approval within any of the 4 lots. Their open space requirement is 30%. And that's what they're proposing to meet is the 30% or more, and it'll be shown at the final site plan stage. The surrounding uses on the north and west and southeast side, there's stormwater ponds. I believe they're all associated with FDOT. And then the PDMU lands that are part of the DRI for University Lakes to the north and actually surrounding the entire parcel. And to the south across 70 and east to the east are residential multifamily uses, zone planned development mixed use as well. We have, it's mostly just pictures. You probably don't need to see those. Basically, we have the positive aspects being the site is within a commercial node and meets commercial locational criteria. It has frontage and direct access to State Road 70, and the proposed commercial retail facilities will provide more services to the nearby residential areas and bypass motorists. Negative is it does abut multifamily residences to the east, and there may be potential negative impacts relative to lights, glare, and noise to the residential areas. However, mitigating factors such as a lighting plan being in compliance with LDC will be required to be submitted at final site plan for each of the 4 lots as they develop. And the site does provide adequate buffers and screening adjacent to the residential development. And any noise impacts will be required to be addressed with the final site plan approval process and may include mitigative measures to be utilized for the design. So staff, the special approval items have since gone away because of the changes to the comprehensive plan and the land development code. However, they were left in there. But we recommend approval of the project with the conditions provided in the ordinance. That's it.
So the revisions to the LDC removed the
mainly the comprehensive plan is the main trigger for requiring special approval. Yeah, so.
Okay, so we've removed, I think
Mhm.
it was all on, seemed like every application, it had something to do with adjacent to perennial stream and.
Right, or over so many square feet in a mixed use and that sort of thing.
You said they were still in the report. I didn't see any special.
Oh, I'm sorry, they're in my presentation.
Okay,
I thought
all right.
we left them in the staff report as well.
There
Maybe
is,
not.
there is a motion that, just reviewing the recommended motion, it does say granting special approval. Is that not occur?
This application was in before the comprehensive plan was effective. So we write our staff report at least a month or 2 months before that, and then this hearing got continued. So it's a very difficult line to know, we reviewed it under the old comprehensive plan, so that is why it is there. The specific approvals are related to size of the commercial and those types of things. So there isn't an issue. So I determined that it was okay to move forward, leaving the special approvals in there.
Okay, and the motion that's suggested in the staff
You read the
report.
motion as it is with the special approvals included.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, any questions for staff? Okay, Mr. Rutledge.
I just am curious about this special approval now. So our change in the code permits this as it's.
Not the code, the comprehensive plan.
Sorry, my mistake.
Well,
Ms. TC. Yes, I want to be.
matters to us.
No, I want to be correct. You'd be surprised. I actually want to be correct myself. So thank you. So regarding a comprehensive plan, our change in that has made this not a special exception any longer, and now meets that, and so it does not require the special exception.
Special approval.
Special approval.
Right, okay, let me get it.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. Yeah.
This is
You
a
knew
learning
that.
curve, and it's complicated when the project has been, what is the date on it? PDMU 1809. Oh, wait, it's been in there for a long, it was submitted in April. The comprehensive plan wasn't effective until October. So, it was reviewed under the comprehensive plan that was in effect at the time that the application was submitted. So, the specific approval, special approvals are adjacent to a perennial stream. We have regulations in our land development code that they must meet. That is why we removed the requirement for a special approval. Special approvals were holding places, but it never got changed in the comprehensive plan. So they have to meet those requirements. It's a mixed-use project in the UF3 future land use category. Again, we no longer require that because we encourage mixed-use projects, so we are trying not to require them to have to rezone to plan development because that was the requirement that you had to do in order to achieve a mixed-use project. Number 3 is a non-residential project that exceeds 30,000 square feet in the UF3 future land use category. Again, we are trying to control the size of projects, either listed as small, medium, or large, and to allow the floor area ratio to have more of an impact, not necessarily have some arbitrary 30,000 square foot number that if it exceeds that, it needs to, again, be a planned development. Project within the Egress Watershed Protection Overlay District. We have regulations in the Land Development Code that you adhere to when you are located in there. These were all of those things that we talked about extensively during the comprehensive plan update, that we are trying to remove those requirements so that you could apply for, in this instance, and I don't know if it would happen, they may have applied for a general commercial zoning instead of a PDMU. So those are the types, but right now they were well into the process, so that didn't happen. But those are the things that are, you won't be seeing quite so many, unless the case is very old. We are trying to remove those and to be utilizing the current comprehensive plan policies as well as eliminating the special approvals from the cases.
Very good. And to reiterate, in not so many words, if the application came in today, the special approvals would not be included in the motion because the comprehensive plan has been revised to allow those by right.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you.
And to simplify it even more.
It's not a contest.
No, I know. But I see Mr. Gershenberg is just waiting to jump into this discussion. My question comes back to, forget the code. forget the comprehensive plan. My question is, with this slough running through there, is this slough more or less protected by the process that we have?
For the record, we can't ignore the comprehensive plan of the Land Development Code.
I know, I say for this
Changes.
discussion.
She means, I'm thinking he meant the changes there too.
Yes, I do. I'm just trying to determine if this, having straddled both options, is more refined and more protective of the slough than previously. That's really my only question. Mr. Gerstenberger?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Rutledge, with respect to this project, as far as staff review, we did include and do include in this staff report, and in conjunction with either the prior version of the comprehensive plan, including the special approval request for a project along a perennial stream, or in this case, a project that's partially within the 25-year floodplain. We do include provisions through the stormwater engineering stipulations to address floodplain mitigation for impacts within the 25 and 100-year floodplain. There is also a requirement for a 25% reduction in the allowable runoff rate for Braden River, which includes Wolf Slough. And there is also a requirement for projects within the Egress Watershed Protection Overlay that those projects provide 150% water quality treatment. Those requirements are all included and incorporated in either the Land Development Code or the Public Works Standards, which are referenced from the comprehensive plan. So with respect to Wolf Slough itself, and in conjunction with this project, there are stormwater design requirements for the flow reduction, for floodplain mitigation, and in addition, for Wolf Slough itself, there is requirements for dedication of drainage and a drainage maintenance access easement along the slough.
Very good. That did answer my question. Thanks.
Very good. All right. Any additional questions for staff? Okay, seeing none. All right, we're going to give the applicant an opportunity to come forward and provide some additional information and clarification. Morning.
Good morning. Denise Greer for King Engineering, and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
Dorothy covered everything that I had planned to cover. I know the question will be, do we know any uses? We don't have any uses at this time. That's why we just came through with a general development plan.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant? Clarifications? Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. We're going to go ahead and open this application for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward and make a comment or statement regarding this application? Anyone at all? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing. And does staff have any closing comments? Anything? Nothing? Okay. Applicant, any additional information? Very good. All right, we're going to go ahead and close the public. Well, first, any additional discussion amongst the commissioners? All right, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and Chair will consider a motion if somebody wishes to make one.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion. I'm going to try to do briefly as possible. I move to recommend approval of the Manatee County Zoning Ordinance number PDMU 1809 ZG, approval of the general development plan with the stipulations, granting special approvals recommended by staff.
Very good. Is that
does that work?
Well, basically, you're moving the recommended motion.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Including the special approvals.
Including special approvals.
Second.
I still want to read all that.
I want to make sure they get their, since they were a topic of discussion, make sure they did.
Yeah. With the special approvals.
Yeah. Very, very good. All right. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Roth, second. Any discussion or deliberation? Okay, seeing none, the chair is going to call the matter to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to the next one, which is number 11, which is CSPR Saunders Family Limited Partnerships. Ms. Tusing, could you please read that one into the record?
Yes, item number of, 11 is PDC 1803ZP. It is CSPR Saunders Family Limited Partnership, Parish Chin Road Center. It is a quasi-judicial hearing, and Kirsten French is here, as well as the applicant's agent to give their presentation.
Very good. Have there been any ex parte communications on this application? Okay, no disclosures. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
And good morning, Ms. French. How are you?
Oh, okay. Excuse me.
Is there a
little
secret?
misunderstanding.
Okay.
Hi. This is my first public hearing. So, good morning. My name is Kirsten French, and I have been sworn. We are here to discuss the Parish Chin Road Center rezoning with a preliminary site plan. I have Rachel Layton here to give her presentation, but I would like to note that you did make a kind of opening about the long presentation versus the short form presentation. I want to eliminate the idea that there's something unusual about this. It's my fault that this ended up being a full presentation on this list. Pretty typical rezoning, in my opinion.
Very good. Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Layton. How are you?
Good morning. I'm Rachel Layton. I'm an AICP planner. I have been sworn. I work for ZNS Engineering. And we're here today seeking a recommendation for approval of a rezoned plan development commercial to preliminary site plan standards. And this one also came in before the comprehensive plan was adopted, so we do have some special approvals in there. I really wasn't going to talk about them, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. If we could bring the slideshow up, that would be great. Thank you. So our property is located at the southwest corner of US 301 North and Chin Road. We're essentially an out parcel that was never entitled for the shopping center. So the shopping center here is zoned PDC. It is a Publix shopping center. It's the shops at Silverleaf, and we have a 1.2 acre parcel that is still in the agricultural zoning district. The house had been used up until this year. It's not really an appropriate use at this intersection of two thoroughfares anymore. So there are some zoning changes that have occurred in this area, and I'm going to go briefly into detail about the application because we are presentations requested. I'm going to go ahead and give a long presentation. But we've been in this process since February, having the plans reviewed. Kirsten took over. She's done a great job. You can see the property shape is quite unusual. So we had some design challenges because the property is also in the North Central Overlay. So the home actually was built in the 1950s. We did do an affordable housing study with neighborhood services as requested by the Land Development Code.
Rachel,
yes,
if I may put you on a pause for a moment.
Sure.
I meant to consult Mr. Rutledge. It just occurred to me now. We did receive a copy of an easement agreement on this project, and Castro Realty was copied on it, and Mr. Rutledge feels that he should have a voting conflict, abstain from voting because of a financial interest.
Not in this particular project, but I have a relationship with Castro and financial interest with them, and so it might be perceived as a conflict. So I'd rather recuse myself than have that be at risk.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to say that for the record.
All right.
And he'll fill the form out after the meeting.
Okay. All right.
The diocese.
Ms. Shank.
Well, you can't participate. I don't care where you sit, but
the question is, can I be quiet while I sit?
You can be quiet.
I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, we'll see.
Can but will, right?
Okay.
You can tell me, and then I'll ask the question.
Very good.
And to that point, Casto is involved in the project as well as Saunders Family Limited. Saunders Family Limited has acquired the property since we began this process. The property is in the future land use category of UF3. This is an area that transitions between a number of different categories. We have Res 3, UF3, Res 6, some ROR, and some Res 12, because this area really is one that's been heavily developed here in the last 20 years. The area of UF3 is really an area that's limited to the urban fringe for low-density residential and support uses. The development is to follow a logical expansion of the urban environment, growing from west to east with the availability of services. Neighborhood and community serving commercial and office uses are permitted, with a maximum floor area now of 0.35. Our project design, though, proposes 8,000 square feet of non-residential uses on this 1.2 acre site, with a proposed floor area ratio of 0.15, which is consistent with the shopping center. I believe they have an FAR of 0.16. The project is in compliance with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. The property is currently zoned general agriculture. So really right now it would be hard pressed to find a use that would actually work with that zoning district. And we are within the North Central overlay. The proposed zoning request will amend the map from general agriculture, which is no longer appropriate, to planned development commercial, and this request is consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan. The change in designations is compatible with development trends in the area and existing surrounding densities and intensities through the proposed site plan design. During the review process, we provided an analysis to land development code criteria for both a zoning map amendment and plan development. So your staff does look at every part of the land development code and the comprehensive plan as they go through this process. But you can see on this map, we've got this little corner here that's still zoned A. The parcel to the east on the other side is also still zoned A, but I would imagine it shouldn't be that for too much longer. I did create a subdivision map. The county GIS information is just a fabulous tool that we have in the county, and the county staff keep it quite up to date. So what I have on this map is subdivisions in green and concurrency projects. Those can be residential or commercial, but really what it shows you is how much development has been approved or occurred on this stretch of US 301. We have Harrison Ranch, we have the Gardens Mobile Home Park, we have Lexington, we have Kingsfield Lakes, we have Silverleaf, and then we have, of course, the shopping center. And this tract here is Gardens Mobile Home Park, which is older than our GIS maps would color it. So we are in an area that transitions, and the services are needed in this area. So now I have the color site plan to share with you all. We are proposing a 3,500 square foot bank with a drive-through, a 4,500 square foot office building. We're proposing 36 parking spaces, which is above code, but we did do a parking utilization study to show that for the proposed uses, we do need the additional parking. It's interesting, the land development code has had so many changes here lately that the parking that would have been required a few years ago is now much reduced. And so we're still struggling with market demand of parking spaces versus code requirements. So the ability to provide that study, that parking utilization by the traffic engineer was appreciated. And so we've been able to provide a site that has 25-foot buffers, all the parking interior to the site. A lot of the design features that are required in the North Central overlay, we've incorporated into the design of this unique parcel. The proposed buildings are one story, and they do meet the North Central Overlay District building setbacks, which are quite unique to the district. We are providing 45% open space where 20% is required. So of our 1.2 acre site, we have half an acre of open space with the buffers that we are proposing. Access to the site is through the Shops at Silverleaf parking lot. There are existing access easements, and we have new access easements coming to update everything for the new purchase of the land. These easements provide connectivity to the parcel as well as water, sewer, and stormwater utilities. The shopping center has access onto US 301 and Chin Road. And the traffic department did review all of our reports and issued an approval letter. Our application does include specific approvals for the site design due to the unique size and shape of the property. And again, this is an infill parcel, so sometimes infill is harder to do than some of our other projects. The North Central Overlay District does allow for a property owner to request specific approvals where there are circumstances where the property configuration prohibits complete compliance. And so we do have 5 specific approvals. they both have to do with the buffers. So the first set of specific approvals have to do with the roadway buffer and design. So we're proposing 25 feet, which has been accepted on other projects through the plan development process here in the area. So this is a reduction of the 50-foot thoroughfare buffer to 25 feet to allow for visibility of the commercial use along US 301 and Chin Road. When the North Central Overlay District was envisioned, my understanding at least is that that 50-foot buffer was really for the residential projects, not to hinder development of commercial projects along the corridor with a 50-foot buffer. So staff and the community have been fairly supportive of that reduction to 25 feet for the buffer. There have been few commercial developments constructed along this corridor since the North Central Overlay has been instituted, but hopefully we'll see some more as the economy kind of takes off here. With the reduction of the thoroughfare buffer, we're also requesting a reduction of the plant material. The buffer, thoroughfare buffer for the North Central Overlay District requires 3 canopy trees, 6 evergreen trees, and 33 shrubs per 100 linear feet. A normal planned development commercial project requires 2 to 2.5 canopy trees and 33 shrubs per linear feet. So the North Central Overlay District asks for a significant amount of additional landscaping, and we are asking only for a reduction of 3 of the 6 required evergreen trees. So we'll still be providing the 3 canopy trees. We would like to provide 3 evergreen trees and the 33 shrubs per 100 linear feet. And this will allow the landscape to establish itself and thrive and still be consistent with the landscaping along that corridor. As the third part to this buffer request is the Land Development Code for North Central Overlay also asks for an additional 15-foot building setback from the buffer. So where on, I guess the way to correlate that is when we have wetland setbacks, we also have a wetland buffer setback. And so I believe the way that it's been interpreted is that if we have a 25-foot roadway buffer, then we need to have an additional 15-foot building setback. So we're asking for a waiver of that due to the size of the property and the ability to site the building the way we have it. Right now, we're about 40 feet from the property line with the Chase Bank building location. So we're almost there to the requirement, but not quite. And in case something needs to be shifted during final engineering design, we would just ask for that flexibility. The next 2 specific approvals relate to the buffer that would have been required in North Central Overlay adjacent to the shopping center. So the shopping center itself has an existing 15-foot landscape buffer immediately adjacent to the property, and we'd like to be able to site the building at the property line. So the next 2 specific approvals have to do with the location of the office building on the property. So we're asking for a reduction of the 20-foot buffer adjacent to the shopping center to provide 0 feet of buffer adjacent to the shopping center because they already have their buffer. And the Land Development Code does give some flexibility through the specific approval process when you have like uses, and actually in a typical plan development, we would have 0. With retail to retail, there would be no buffer required. And we're also asking for a 0-foot side yard setback, and staff has been supportive of these items as we've been under review of the project. And again, the code does allow for property with unique circumstances to seek specific approvals where the strictest application would be difficult to achieve. And again, the site is almost triangular in nature at the intersection of these 2 thoroughfares. And we are providing a future right-of-way setback along Chin Road. We are providing an outdoor gathering space and pedestrian connectivity throughout the site. And again, we're providing 45% open space. Our bank building is set back 63 feet from the travel lane, and we have a 17-foot tall building for the Chase Bank building. So I also have some elevations of the Chase Bank. The Chase Bank building, again, is oriented at the front of the property, and during the review process, Chase Bank offered the color the color elevations for staff review for consistency with Land Development Code and the North Central Overlay regulations. And these do meet the intent of the North Central Overlay District and the 4-page document that goes with it. I forgot what that one's titled, Margaret. Anyway, the office building will provide a unity of design through the use of similar architectural elements. So what we have here is the north face of the building, the east elevation of the building, the south elevation of the building that'll be internal to the site, and then the west elevation of the building, which is closer to the service areas internal to the site. So in closing, we responded to all review comments during the process. We have a staff report that has some stipulations and some specific information included with it. We are in agreement with all of the proposed stipulations, including the one that came in the update memo today. We have provided a copy of the easement agreement. It has been signed by Saunders Family LLC, but it has not yet been signed by the shopping center entity, but we anticipate that happening relatively soon. So as you can see, the unique shape of the property created some design challenges. We worked very closely with staff to make sure that we had a project that would really be a benefit to our community. And again, we have a positive staff report. The request is consistent with the Manatee County Comprehensive Plan, serves as an infill project, and captures the vision of the county by implementing and supporting the How Will We Grow report. We respectfully request the Planning Commission recommend approval of the rezoning and preliminary site plan, and that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Very good, thank you. Could you go back to the graphic that had the areas identified in red, the building?
Yes, our building's in red.
Obviously, the one building is red. What is the corner in the GDP, I'm sorry, the PSP? I presume that to be stormwater? Then.
We are tying into the master stormwater system for the shopping center. So this will also be available for landscaping. Is this corner is what you're talking about?
No, ma'am, the southwest corner.
This is the office building location. This red area here.
Okay, I thought in the GDP, maybe that's just the note. It says to shopping center stormwater collection. So I guess that's probably just a note in that space. So,
yes.
Okay.
How tall is that building?
The office building, we don't anticipate to be more than 1 story. Actually, it can only be 1 story. So maybe 20 or 24 feet, depending on how the design is completed.
Also, can you please clarify, you said you're asking for a elimination of a side yard setback? Is that what you indicated?
Yes. In the PDC, it requires, I believe, a 15-foot side yard setback for the building, and we have requested a 0-foot.
And that's only on the the building?
Correct.
That we just
only for the office building.
Okay, all right. And then you made a comment regarding an easement agreement that has not yet been executed by your neighbor. Does that, if by chance that doesn't happen,
It's been in process for months. It's just sitting on someone's desk. It hasn't made it to the final signature.
I guess I don't know that it's relevant, but it seems like that would be something that is necessary for this to move forward. If they don't agree, then.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have stipulated that in the update memo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's the new stipulation, and we've agreed to it.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Any additional questions for the applicant?
Yeah, that easement is the one that's right in front of the building, south.
I don't have a copy of it. I have a copy of the graphic that's in the easement agreement. I can put that on the overhead.
It can only be that location.
So the areas that are highlighted, this is one of my graphics I created. So we have access point off Chin Road here, and then our customers can travel to the property from here. There's also an access point here, and they can travel through the project here and back to US 301, or come back down and use Chin Road. So these are the intended access, instead of it being a blanket easement.
So then there is no easement into the property? Got that.
Ms. Layton, can you also just highlight the property on that?
I guess I'm looking for an easement that goes into the shopping center. Am I missing something here? Okay, I got it.
Okay, so where I highlighted in yellow is the travel path through the shopping center, and then our project.
Very good. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much. All right, we're going to open this application up for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on this application? Anyone at all? Very good. All right, we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing. And does the commission have any need for clarifications, discussion?
Rutledge probably.
I kind of like this.
We have to recuse him a lot.
All right, closing comments from staff?
I do have a presentation with some graphics about those specific approvals if you're interested in seeing them. Otherwise,
I think we're good.
Okay. Then staff recommended approval with all the stipulations.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this was your first public presentation. Sorry, maybe we can get you on more mic time next time.
Sorry you missed me.
Get you a tougher one next time.
Very good. Any closing comments from the applicant?
No, and I'm going to apologize to Kirsten for not giving her time to present, but no, we appreciate everything staff has done. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right, we're going to, if there's no other questions for the applicant or staff, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment portion, the public hearing, and the chair will consider a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. I'll try to make this brief again. I move to recommend approval of Manatee County Ordinance number PDC 1803ZP, approval of preliminary site plan with the stipulations, granting special approval for multiple use project, and I'm trying to find the rest. Granting specific approvals recommended by staff. I didn't have my glasses. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, it's the recommended motion as revised in the update memo.
Yes, revised in the update memo.
Include the new stipulation A2.
Yes, ma'am.
A2, very good. Yep, got it. I have a motion, and Mr. Roth seconded the motion. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, the motion's gonna. The chair's gonna call a motion to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye. Motion passes 4-0. Mr. Rutledge abstaining. So the next application we have is item number 12. And again, I have a conflict of interest on this one. So I'm going to, again, turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Mr. Ron, and I'm going to step off the dais. Yeah. Sorry. Don't forget ex parte.
I won't forget the ex parte.
I'm going to make a flashcard.
Can you hold that up for me?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Ms. Susan, can you read can you read it into the record, please?
Yes, Mr. I guess Vice Chairman, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chairman? Vice Chairman?
Yes, Vice Chairman.
Okay. PDMU, this is item number 12, which is PDMU 1704GR. It's LPROP 1 LLC, Florida International Trade Port, and it was formerly known as Ellington Commerce Park. It is a quasi-judicial matter, and I am the planner for this hearing. This is a companion to the plan amendment that was recently recommended by this commission to the board. They had their they had their transmittal hearing, and will have their public hearing on the adoption on Tuesday, December 18th. So this is the companion zoning, not zoning, excuse me. It's a general development plan revision. The property is already zoned plan development mixed use. And the applicant's representatives are here, and they will give their presentation at this time.
Thank you, ma'am. Has there been any ex parte communications with regard to this application?
No.
All right, thank you. Can I get the directed by staff? Can I have the applicant's presentation? Good morning.
Thanks, Commissioners. Good morning. My name is Todd Mathis, representing Benderson Development. I have Christopher Hatton from Kimley Horn with us and Clint Kuffel from WRA. I have a PowerPoint, if I could have that, please. As Margaret said, we were before you guys not 2 months ago with respect to the proposed comprehensive plan amendment. We're not changing the zoning on the site. If you recall, we were taking the remainder of our property, this 40-acre parcel on the northwest, and this parcel, and adding it to the remainder of the mixed-use future land use designation that's there. The Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously. The Board of County Commissioners adopted the first reading unanimously, and we're before you now, and we'll be back in front of the Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday, hopefully to receive approval of that proposed comprehensive plan amendment, and then they'll receive your recommendation on the GDP on January 10th. Since that time, a couple of other things transpired. We did have an opportunity to meet with and speak with our neighbor on the west, Marshall Gabati, who has a plan in review and in development at the county. He came to the county commission meeting and had endorsed our project, and we're looking at how we can work together and create some synergy there. We also had a neighborhood meeting with the folks primarily along 29th Street, the neighbors on the north, on November 7th. And on November 14th, sort of the catalyst for this application, which is a 1 million square foot new user, new to Manatee County, 600 new jobs, met with your economic development folks, and so they are discussing the future of this project together. It's a project we're very excited to have on the line, and we think will provide great benefits to Manatee County. So we're moving forward on all fronts and trying to cover all bases, and we're moving fast, and we appreciate the county staff's support and input so far. So if you just look at the slide right now, we're here in December with 2 hearings and have a little ways to go. Again, just to orient you, the bottom of the screen is I-75. The left side of the screen is 17th Street, and the right side of the screen is 29th Street. You can kind of see grayed out the area that's currently under construction on the site and which you had previously approved GDP for. The area in the cloud is the new GDP boundary, which is the balance of the property we own out there. This is just an aerial overlay of that. And then this is sort of a depiction of what that site would likely look like when we go to the FSP process. Again, on the north, we have the up to 1 million square foot user. They started at 650,000 feet with a 350 expansion. They went to 750. Now they're at 1 million immediately and talking to us about another 300,000 feet. So in the 2 million total feet that we are requesting approval for, that one user, and that job number keeps growing with that use. That one user is going to use most of it, and really the remainder of the space would be to fill in what's not currently either under construction or part of that project, which is these 4 buildings across from the buildings that are under construction today. I think from a land use GDP perspective, there's sort of 2 critical issues, one on the north, one on the south, and I'm going to let Christopher Hatton talk about the one on the south. On the north, there's 2 things. One is we have a proposed way to try and soften as much as we can that building frontage. The back of that building will be along 29th Street. All the truck activity will be on the south side of the building away from the neighborhood, so that building's going to act as a big buffer. If you think about SRQ Tech Park, where we have Berry Plastics warehouse, it's the same basic situation. We back into a somewhat rural neighborhood. The back of that building is the inactive part of the building, and it faces the neighborhood like it will here. We have a landscape buffer, which we're working on. We've met with the neighborhood, and basically what our plan and goal is here is on 29th Street, from the point where our road intersects 29th Street areas east, we're going to leave the character of that road as is. We've met with the neighbors. They like the way the road looks. There's a lot of existing native vegetation between the existing pavement, which is not very wide. There's not 2 built lanes in either direction. There's a lot of existing native vegetation. We're going to leave all that intact, and that provides a good buffer. It's the pavement width varies in the right of way that's there, but there's generally 20 to 25, sometimes more, of a native vegetation cover between the existing edge of pavement and our property line. From our property line, there will then be a 75-foot landscaped buffer before you get to development on our site. So you're a good 100-plus feet away from the existing pavement within the right-of-way and from the neighbors. We are going to bring sewer down that road because there's some folks, we're going to bring sewer to ourselves. Obviously, there's some folks that want to connect. There's some folks that don't want to connect. I think it's a fair and equitable thing to let our neighbors have that opportunity. 29th Street west of where we interconnect, which is on the west boundary of our site, basically across the street from the landscape company that's on 29th Street. Our intent and plan is to rebuild that road as 2 functional lanes. Provide a trail, more of a trail on the north side. These are all things to get sort of worked out with staff through the FSP process, but I want you to know what we've talked to our neighbors about and committed to. There was also some mention that there's a school bus stop on that street. We're getting more details about that, and we're going to provide an area for that bus for a safe place for kids to be on 29th Street. There's no intention to direct trucks onto 29th Street. Truck movement from our road onto 29th Street doesn't work. It doesn't work when you're turning onto Ellington Gillette, and it definitely doesn't work very well down by the racetrack from Ellington Gillette onto 301. If you try and drive your pickup truck around the corner, it's not where trucks are going to go. Trucks are going to go south, and so that's our plan on 29th Street. I know a couple of our neighbors are here to speak, and we've met with a lot of our neighbors. The other thing we're going to go out and do is meet specifically with our neighbors on an individual basis. If they have input on that landscape buffer, they want more trees, they want different type of vegetation. We've got 100 feet between the right-of-way and our own property, and whatever they want on their side of the property, and we'll take any direction they have, because as much as we can do, we want to do. We think the project's exciting. We think the building's right. We think we've designed it right. It's how it fits on the property, but it's a 1 million square foot building. We know it's changing how they relate to our property. So we're going to do as much as we can there. Down on 51st, where truck traffic will be directed, I'm going to let Christopher Hatton go through the work we've done so far. The County Commission was very clear with us about their expectations, both at the next hearing and through this GDP process, that we identify as many improvements as we can, and that's what I'd like Christopher to step through in this presentation.
Todd, could you do me a favor? Could you state your name that you've been sworn?
Sorry about that. Todd Mathis. You know what? I don't know if, I think you pulled us out. I haven't been sworn.
Sorry. So you have to say that again?
Start over.
Yeah. I couldn't possibly.
Oh, that's a check in the mailbox.
It only gets worse from here.
Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to present to the Planning Commission will be truthful and accurate?
I do.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
And have been.
And Mr. Mathis, you just have to incorporate your testimony into.
All of the testimony I just said was true and accurate. Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioners.
What are you, new here?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Christopher Hatton. I'm a registered professional traffic engineer with Kimley Horn. And as Todd said, let's just go away. Let's see. Yeah, sorry about that. We conducted a, let's go ahead and, there it is, perfect. Awesome. There we go. Okay. We did conduct a generalized traffic analysis for the GDP process, but as Todd mentioned, when we were here in October, we had gotten feedback that we'd wanted more detailed analysis as it related specifically to the 51st Avenue corridor. So we have worked with Benderson as well as WRA to come up with specific operational and capacity enhancing improvements along the 51st Avenue corridor. Now, before I get into that, and I won't get into too many of these details, but one specific question we actually met in November with Manatee County Transportation staff was they wanted more detail on really what this size and scale of development would be generating. So we conducted a site-specific traffic and specifically trip generation analysis for a similar site, in essence, that ultimately the use that we were studying was ultimately going to be coming here. So what we did is we conducted a AM and PM peak hour analysis of that, came up with trip generation rates, and as the county has requested us, they wanted us to see which ones were most like the ITE trip generation manual uses, whether or not this was going to be a high cube warehouse, something to that, or the general warehouse. We found out the trip generation rates without getting into too much detail. The observed rates that we have were slightly less than the warehouse use, but in order to provide a conservative analysis, we did our analysis just recently as it related to the 51st Avenue corridor using the warehouse rate. So the big takeaway there is that we did a trip generation analysis, we found the rates, but we have used numbers that are higher, so in order to provide a conservative analysis. And the importance here, and I do have a couple of slides that will be coming up in just a second that will specifically show a little bit closer to what we're doing at the intersections of 17th Memphis and 51st, as well as on the south at 51st and US 301. And specifically what we're doing, and I will actually go ahead and get to them because it's a zoom in here. Here's the 51st Avenue and 17th Street / Memphis Road. We are proposing to add a northbound left specific capacity enhancement to that intersection, as well as to, at this point, what we have identified, and again, this is something that we have provided ahead of the FSP, which is when we do our detailed traffic analysis, but again, this was the request of the commissioner. So we have anticipated wanting to basically kind of remove that eastbound right free flow movement and to actually bring it into an all-way stop control at this time. That is basically providing the safest conditions. Now, if the county gets some more time to evaluate it and look at it and comes up with some other operational control that they would like to see, we're certainly open to that. We want to provide this as to be the safest as well as the most operationally functional intersection it can be. But with that always stop control, it does operate acceptably with the VC, volume to capacity ratios less than 1, and so we feel pretty confident about that. And now also the intersection at 301 and 51st Avenue, this is the one where obviously you're going to have the great majority of traffic come specifically. You've got the truck traffic, as Todd mentioned, that will be coming down this area. The big part and the big takeaway here are the movements that we're adding. We have actually now a separate individual left turn lane, a left through lane, and obviously not a lot of through lanes, so it's almost a de facto dual left turn lanes with a pretty well-defined separate right turn lane. So, and as you can see, the actual left turn lanes go back several hundred feet, almost back to the next driveway, which provides a significant amount of capacity for queuing vehicles to be able to be stored at that intersection. So again, we ran our analysis, the volume to capacity ratios were less than 1, but the enhancement here will fit in real well with what obviously the DOT that is doing out on 301. And again, we'll wait feedback that we get from the county in terms of any feedback they have, but we wanted to get this ahead of time so we could be moving quickly because that's the idea here. And one last thing, because Nelson's here, I did want to let him know that we heard your concerns certainly of the multimodal and alternatives, improvements, and those will actually be analyzed as part of the FSP, so those will be done along 49th and certainly in the area that we have been asked to do. So can either ask any questions or wrap it up.
Commissioners, any questions of?
Is there a light at 51st and 301?
Right now, yes, there is. It's just, and you can see it's kind of an overlay right now. It has a kind of a left through and kind of a I don't know, marginal, if you will, right turn lane that's there. So it's certainly in terms of for that gas station, it's kind of pseudo operating right now. So
how many trips exist now at that corner?
Oh, at the signalized intersection?
Yeah.
I can get that exact number in terms of the ones that are southbound.
Additional trips, whichever works.
Yeah, we're anticipating about, during the PM peak hour, about 139 southbound trips that will be coming from from the project itself.
Which would kind of tell us that there's got to be more than 139 trips normally.
Oh, yes, absolutely, significantly more right now.
Twice as many?
I'll have to look at it just to be honest with you, but probably during the PM peak hour, I would estimate that getting through there's probably, for the left through and right, probably about 450, 500, something like that.
And is that road actually large enough to contain that on a regular basis?
Yes, I mean, right now, like I said, the operations that it's conducting right now is basically, it's working, operating right now satisfactorily. What we've focused on, really, to be honest with you, is not so much in terms of like a level of service, but it's more of the queues. And that's the main thing, just because of the size of these vehicles that are going to be coming through. So what we've done is to try to significantly enhance the actual queuing that will be allowed so that you have 3 or 4 stacked up.
As you go north on 51, is there a gas station up there, like a racetrack or something?
Yes, if you see from this graphic up here, it's the one right there on the right. That's the
Thank you.
The restaurant's on the left.
In the hotel?
Yeah, the hotel, right.
Yeah.
Any other questions of the applicant?
I mean, it's just a question of modeling, but, I mean, you said you picked the best model for the comparative of traffic.
Oh, correct, in terms of to identify what the traffic would be from our site, correct.
So on your expert engineering analysis, it's the best choice? It's not just the most complimentary?
It's actually more conservative than, yes, what we did is, and let me just show you just real quick, I'll just show you, and it's pretty easy. If you look here, what's basically outlined are our numbers in the yellow. For the AM peak hour, that's a 0.09 trips per 1,000 square feet.
Right.
And then in the PM peak hour, it's 0.13. So that's the rate. If you look at what's circled in red and then circled in blue, it's most like a high cube, kind of the cold storage, large scale, but we've actually utilized the land use code 150 warehouse, which is greater. So the 0.17 is almost double the AM. The 0.19 is more. So we put more traffic on there so that when we looked at it, our queues, yeah. So that's what we did. We figured that's what the county would probably require of us.
When we get a traffic impact report like this, who reviews it on the staff?
Nelson Galeno, Transportation Planning, and I have been served. Yes, Transportation Planning review the traffic impact study that they submit.
And so you guys have looked at this and this is okay?
Yes, sir, we need to revise everything that, yes.
Any other questions of the applicant?
I think this may be a bit off track, and since the chairman's not here, I'm going to try. You know, the last time you came before us, there was a gentleman, and I think you mentioned his name, I won't, that there was a neighbor that had some residential next to you and was very concerned. And did I understand you to say that he went to the commission and recommended the project?
Our neighbor on the west came and spoke in front of the commission and indicated to the commission that he was not objecting to the project. He's looking at how his land uses relate to what we're proposing and that we would continue to work together. I think that's the best summary I could give you. It may not be word for word, but
he seemed animated and frustrated, so to say that he stood up and said he wasn't is good progress, I think. So thanks for that.
It was good progress, and we appreciated the sort of good neighbor effort, and we're going to continue to put it into his project and ours.
Okay.
So he hasn't asked you to buy his property out?
You know, we're all developers out here, so you know, money always talks. But
I'm just looking to find out if that's really what happened.
No, sir, we're not buying his property.
Everybody good, Commissioner? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Commissioners.
Staff?
Good morning, Margaret Tusing for Building and Development Services, and I have been sworn. Mr. Mathis did a very good job of presenting the item. So what I would like to do is point out some of the stipulations that staff has proposed for this project to make sure that the adjacent property owners are protected as best as they can be. We have stipulation, excuse me, I had it. D9, which is adjacent to 29th Street East, which is the property, which is on the north side of the property, and the north side of that is currently developed with single-family residential homes. And the western property line, because there's a mixture, that is where the gentleman who spoke at the Planning Commission meeting, his property is, but it is currently vacant. And then along the eastern or western property line, there's some large lot development that does have single family on it. So we're requiring the applicant to have a minimum of a 75-foot landscape buffer. And as he had indicated, they have not come to detail as to what that will be, but because he will work with the neighborhood as well as staff to make the best type buffer, whether it's a berm or just extensive landscaping. And also stipulation number D10 discusses how the building orientation in the parking lots will work. So Mr. Mathis did discuss and showed you on his site plan, which I don't have such a nice site plan, that the buildings will be, smaller size will be adjacent to the western property line. And then on the north side, the adjacent to 29th Street, there will be the front or backside, not the activity. All of the activity will be interior on the opposite side of the building. So we feel that that's removing any of the loading, unloading activity from visual inspection, and then also have the building as a buffer to that. So that's stipulation 10, and that's anywhere that it is adjacent to either existing residential uses or proposed residential. So I think that we've attempted to do that. And as I said previously, their floor area ratio, even though the square footage sounds like a lot, they have 187 acres, which they could have a floor area ratio of 1, which is what the mixed use, future land use category allows, and they're at a 0.31 with the 2.5 million square feet. And the plan amendment has not been finalized by the board yet. It is going to the board on next Tuesday, which is December 18th, at a time certain at 11, and that's when that will be up for adoption. And then this GDP will be heard by the board on January 10th, 2019. So I think now if there are any questions, I believe that we've covered all of the issues. So if you have any questions of staff, I'm here to answer any.
Regarding, forgetting the floor ratio for a moment, but tell me if I'm correct. We've gone from 500,000 square feet to 2,500,000 square feet of building?
Yes, the original GDP that was approved was only a small portion of the site. It was not for the entire site. It was only for the southern portion of the site. Well, let me try to put up a map so I can show you. If I can have the overhead, please. Do this. Make it north. Oops. Okay. These were the original buildings that were approved. This is what was originally approved on the site plan.
Okay.
The bubble area is the new. So as you can see, that 500,000 square feet was on a very small portion of the property. Any other questions?
Any other questions of staff?
So can I ask Todd a question?
Well, is that part of rebuttal? Can we ask that during applicant rebuttal or?
Whatever time you want.
I mean.
Yeah, it can be during rebuttal.
Okay. Is that for staff questions? All right, thank you. Now we'll open up to public comment. We have 2 speaker cards. And when you come up, can you please state your name that you have been sworn? You'll get 3 minutes to speak. Can I have a Daniel Silpa? Yes, sir.
My name's Daniel Silpa, and I have been sworn. I did have a really nice prepared speech for y'all until I heard Todd talk. And first of all, in terms of the engineer, I've been on that intersection many times. I've had 3 near misses. I've seen a whole bunch of other near misses. Good luck. What you didn't take into account is traffic going from the southern part of 51st going straight across. That is where most of the accident potential occurs. Just FYI from a person who deals with
Chair,
that.
the speaker has to direct his
Can
comments.
you direct your comments to the
The other issues are that the fundamental issue is that we live in a neighborhood that's been well established for a long time. Benderson wishes to basically completely disrupt the neighborhood. It has been an agricultural and residential neighborhood. We've owned property there for 10 years, and quite frankly, we've invested about $1 million into our property, given the land acquisition, the house, barn, outbuildings, infrastructure. We're no little thing, and some of our neighbors are bigger, but most of them are smaller. I understand the concepts that Todd is presenting, that he's going to try to mitigate as much impact onto our neighborhood. I have to admit that my profession is an emergency medicine physician where I've been serving this community for over 23 years. I know that school bus stop that Todd referred to. It is profoundly difficult right now. When I come home from work late at, early morning hours, I see these kids standing there. I know the kids are playing around, and I take extreme great precaution to avoid hitting them. somehow I don't quite think that no matter how many millions of dollars they put into this simple school bus stop, you're going to prevent the trucks who are going to try to use that road, employees who are probably late to work and are hustling down that road, or just people who are going to use the new road as a shortcut to get from Elton Gillette Road to the Pilot gas station area. You know, a kid is going to get hurt. A kid is going to get killed. My job is to resuscitate them. Please don't make me have to do that. I don't want to be the one to have to tell one of my neighbors that their kid is dead or brain damage, which might be worse. Again, there is a whole slew of formal things I would have loved to said, but I think Todd pretty much angered me enough to say that we in the neighborhood are just sort of getting pushed over. If that is the role of the county to proceed, so be it. For a little thing. But your role today is to approve an increase in this project by 400%, as Commissioner Roth pointed out. I think that will just fundamentally destroy this neighborhood and destroy our land values, none of which will be compensated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next up, we have Felicia Silpa. Can you please state your name that you've been sworn? And you have 3 minutes.
I'm Felicia Silpa, and I have been sworn. And I indeed came with also a bunch to say. I think the biggest thing is I am a homeowner, a farmer, and an archaeologist for the Gamble Plantation. So I have a couple things that I want to address. As a farmer, I have Arabian horses. They have already had beer bottles thrown at them from 29th Street. My concern is the traffic. I've already been to the meeting that Todd put on, and I brought the attention about the bus stop needing bumpers, not bumpers, what do you call them? No, yes, speed bumps, and I'm hoping that will help. My fear is, what is a quiet neighborhood, other than me yelling at the horses, that it's going to become a real dangerous atmosphere for everyone, for the children, for my family, for the horses, for the wildlife. You know, we don't have just the regular gator, and because we're surrounded by the lakes, lakes. We have the gators, we have the turtles, we have all the standard water stuff. We have eagles, we have otters, we have foxes. All this building and lack of infrastructure is also going to just destroy them or move them on. And I'm concerned about this. And then finally is we're surrounded by the water. Hopefully, as Todd has pointed out, they'll do something with the road. But the big thing is 1843, this area was underwater. I have it on map, okay? The lakes helps mitigate that. We can have our farms. But it drains into what south, the Gamble Plantation, which is now for cows and eventually development. So my concern then is that, number one, are we going to end up with backed up water into our property? Or number two, worse, also as bad, is water being shunted and then getting down and flooding the state-owned property of the Gamble Mill. And that's a problem to me as the archaeologist for the Gamble Plantation. And so thank you very much. And I appreciate the work that Todd has put into it. But I really am concerned about the cut-throughs. And sorry if I ran over my time.
Oh, you're fine, ma'am. Thank you. Is there any staff closing comments with regards to the comments that have been made in the public comment?
Tom, do you want to address some of the drainage?
Yeah.
Okay. Nelson Galeano, Transportation Planning. I have been sworn. I want to clarify the multimodal concept of this project. Benderson has right now a nice opportunity to develop an interesting, complete street project. And I say this is interesting because the mix of the users that will be at this project. It means it's not only the drivers of the trucks, it's also the employees, the neighbors, the students. It means there are a different type of users around this project. Second, Benderson has the opportunity also to analyze the context. It means what is surrounding the project. And finally, it should include also safety, environmental, and economical issues. I am describing complete street concept for this type of project. And that is what multimodal analysis on the next step will address on the study.
Okay. Mr. Grisselberg, could you address the concern about the runoff from the new project and how that the stormwater management will affect the surrounding neighborhood?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. With respect to this project, the project area itself, as shown on the general development plan, the project area itself predominantly is draining southerly directly into the Manatee River. There is a tributary that drains directly into the river just to the west of the interchange at US 301 and I-75. It actually is going through just to the west of 49th Avenue East. Excuse me, 51st Avenue East. There is a small portion of this particular project area that is shown on the general development plan, as was brought up in citizen comment, that would be draining westerly and then southerly into the drainage system that runs along Gamble Mansion, and then there is also a very small portion of this project that is also draining easterly into Government Hammock, which is the drainage system east of the interstate that's running through the Outlet Mall and then southerly along 60th Avenue East. There are very small portions of this project and surrounding areas that have been delineated within the 100-year floodplain. I would note that the area that was brought up, the E-Lakes, which I can identify on aerial if the commission request, is identified within the 100-year floodplain itself. And then there's also portions, very small portion in the northeast corner of this particular project that's shown on the development plan that is within the 25-year floodplain. The project itself would be required to provide attenuation of runoff for the proposed impervious areas associated with the buildings, the proposed roadways, drive aisles, and the parking areas associated with this project, and would be required to provide floodplain mitigation for any impacts within the 25-year and 100-year floodplain.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions to staff?
You know, I go up there at some regularity, and I think that your statement is very correct. I think when we look at the stuff that we've seen from Lake Flores, with the creativity of a multimodal way for large sections of commercial and residential and schools with IMG and all that, I just thought that was very creative. I like the idea of us going to that. You know, I live close to Lakewood Ranch, where there's a lot of integration between bikes and cars, and now quite a bit of traffic coming over the bridge. So I think that way of thinking on an intersection like this, that really currently is a torturous experience at best, is a good solution. My brother's a trauma surgeon, so your statements hit home with me. I appreciate that very much, and safety is a key thing. We struggle with development where we lived, and it used to be like this. And I've been in Florida 60-some years, and I see it. It is what it is. But I do think the idea of having a creative solution is critical for us thinking, and I think Manatee County has a lot of opportunity for that. We see it affected on the west side and on the east side. And when I go up there, I see all the commercial and residential on one side, and this seems to be what used to be the agricultural area and all that, now becoming commercial, which in a land planning sense makes a lot of sense. But I do think we have this integration, and somehow to address that and accommodate that. And I have to say that when we've kind of challenged Todd to think about that creatively and be aggressive to try and help us solve that. I think he's responded. So I would like to just make sure that you are cognizant that we think that's a very important solution. That the intersection as it stands, just to put more cars through there like we're talking about, more trucks, is not complete in its wholeness. So I applaud your approach, and that's the one comment I would make, that I'd like to think a little more creatively than just, now we stacked up 10 trucks or 15 trucks. And, you know, that solution is an old solution, and I think we ought to think about some more. So I applaud that and appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Applicant rebuttal.
Thanks, Commissioners. If I could have the overhead. Hey, I want to respond. If I could have the overhead. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Perfect. I do want to just back up and put it in a little bit of context. It's a discussion we had during the comp plan hearing, but I think it's relevant to some of the public testimony. We own 187 acres, and there's a lot of vertical relief across our property. We're at about elevation 28 on the north and 14 on the south. Everything flows south across our property. 130 acres of that has a mixed-use future land use designation. The 50 that doesn't, 10 of it is a stormwater pond, which we've built, and it's going to remain a stormwater pond. The other 40 was the Ellington Palms Affordable Housing Project, which was previously approved and proposed here. We have a thoroughfare roadway that's long been planned through the middle of our site, which will ultimately connect north of us, and 29th Street is a collector road. And so all this is to say there's always been a plan for a very large commercial project of some sort and form or use on this property. We did come back before you and we took 72 acres out of the 187, and that's where the 500,000 feet of GDP was previously proposed and which we started constructing. I could have never guessed, and honestly my head's spinning still, that we'd be back this fast with this much of an opportunity with a user, but we're excited about it because it's a unique thing, and to have a 1 million square foot user, and now they're 1 million plus, standing at Manatee County's doorstep with 600 jobs, we wanted to make it fit. We do want to do everything we can for our neighbors, and that's why we're talking to them about sewer. Your staff wants to make sure everything's done. That's why there's a 75-foot buffer beyond the roadway, and we're being a little creative about 29th Street. So I think we have a good opportunity here to make all these things blend. I think the project fits with the existing zoning, and the proposed comp plan amendments really are accommodating a small portion of that total expansion area of that building. The rest fits with what's there today. So we understand the challenges in front of us. We're going to respond, and we're going to keep working with our neighbors to make the project work. But we do think it's a great opportunity for Manatee County and for this site. Thank you.
I will give Commissioner Rutherford a question.
Point of information. In your knowledge of what Benderson does and other people of a similar ilk, can you tell me anywhere else in the neighboring 5 states where we have 2,500,000 square feet of buildings as a conglomeration?
Yes, Commissioner. I mean, we could march up and down I-75. You don't got to go 5 states away, or I-95. We've studied a lot of projects like this. You know, we have a project in Manatee County, Sarasota Commerce Center, that's about 1 million feet. And so between that and other projects we've been adding, they do exist, Commissioner.
1 million feet. Tell me one where it's 2,500,000.
2,500,000 off the top of my head. The one that you would probably know soonest that's entitled is right behind. It's where Amazon got built off of I-75 in Tampa, sort of behind. You can kind of see it behind the sewer lift station infrastructure that's getting built. That's all entitled for at least that much square footage. I've got a project on the south side of the airport in Lee County. We just got done putting almost 4 million feet of space on that property. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of projects of this magnitude. If you think of University Parkway as an example, it's not warehouse distribution space, it's commercial retail. But we have 3 million feet standing in that corner. So yeah, we're familiar with projects this size. It's a big project. It's not an enormous project by any means. There's bigger projects out there.
It's more of an exception than it is a regular.
It's something we're excited about, certainly, Commissioner.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further deliberation among commissioners?
Well, I just like to say that I think we're fortunate to have good developers in our community. I'm excited about stuff that brings this kind of attention to Manatee County. It's tough on us who've been here a little while, but and I read all this stuff. I don't want to make comment about the environmental report, but I always am a bit frustrated when I see that there's recognized habitat there, but when they go to look, they didn't see any. And it's like, have you ever been hunting? You never see them. Of course, that's why they're still there. So, but having said all that, I think that's just some of the progress. If we manage it well, and we have extended buffers, and we talk about intermodal, and we make sure Mr. Gerstenberger does not let people let their water run off inappropriately. That I think that we've done the best we can. And so I would be a supporter of this project. I'm excited about what it means for Manatee County. And so I'm going to be supportive, although I have my own frustrations with some of the stuff. But.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to say that, just in closing, that, Bitterson's been a great neighbor for Manatee County and Sarasota County. I think every project they do, it's well thought out, it's well designed, and they take the surrounding areas into effect. I live in Palmyra and experience what's going on University Parkway, and they are a great neighbor for us, and I'd be in support of this project. I think bringing jobs to this community, tax dollars to this community is important for us, so I'd be in support of this project. With that said, can I get a motion? I can't make it, so.
It'd be on your agenda memo, it's the recommend motion, and it's made subject to the council plan amendment becoming effective.
Okay.
All right, I can read that. You want me to read that?
No, that's okay.
Okay, sorry. I so move.
Is that your?
That's my motion.
And Mr. Roth, second. I'd like to call the motion to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chairman votes aye. That's 4 approving, with Commissioner Connolly had to recuse himself. With that will close this portion of the public hearing for the Planning Commission. We do have some other business, and where's our commissioner at? So there you go. Thank you all very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, staff.
Thank you very much. I think the last bit of business is election of officers. Who has the?
I'm a bonehead.
Somebody
had these smart
okay.
company.
Juan Acevedo for the clerk's office. I will open the floor for nominations for chairman.
I'd like to nominate the existing chairman to extend the to his position.
Seconded.
To close nominations.
So moved.
So do we have to call a vote now? Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, I guess.
Tag, you're it.
This is where you win and you lose.
Yeah.
I turn it over to you.
Very good. Thank you. The next position that we have to fill is vice chair, first vice chair. Very good. So we'll open the floor for nominations. Nominations.
I nominate Mr. Rutledge.
Mr. Rutledge. Very good.
Is that legal?
Do we have any other nominations? Do we have to have a second on a nomination, or just a motion to close? Motion to close?
Motion close.
Motion to close, okay. All those in favor of Mr. Rutledge as first vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Those opposed, I don't think we need that because it's...
Be silent.
Yeah. All right, and now the second vice chair. I'd like to open it up for motions for second vice chair. Can I make a motion as the chairman?
Just pass the gavel.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Ron as second vice chair. Second, we have a second. Motion to close the nominations. Very good.
All in favor?
All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not doing it, am I?
Yeah, you're doing it. I'm passing it back now.
Okay.
Just a minute.
How many vice chairs do we have?
One more.
You have
One more.
Okay. Very good. So I'd like to open it for third vice chair.
I'll name it Mr. Roth.
Mr. Roth, very good. Any other nominations? Motion to close? Call the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Very good. And I think that fills our officers.
That leaves me as water boy?
Yes. You're the new guy.
This year, only this year. Next year, you can have my position.
Yeah.
I'll stay water boy.
Just think after the next meeting, you won't be the newest guy on the
Right, that's right.
Second guy comes.
So, all right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to close. Thank you.
Thank you.